You've worked hard for what you have. Your money, your assets, your 401k, and home. Isn't it all worth protecting? Nearly 1 in 4 consumers have been a victim of identity theft. LifeLock Ultimate Plus helps protect your finances with up to $3 million in reimbursement. LifeLock alerts you to identity threats you might miss. And if your identity is stolen, your dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will work to fix it. Let LifeLock help protect what you've worked so hard for. Save 25% off your first year on LifeLock Ultimate Plus at LifeLock.com/aware. Terms apply.
Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Kaufman. I'm here for Attitude Magazine, and you're listening to our weekly Attitude ADHD Experts. On this hour of ADHD Experts, we're talking about money. I think it's safe to say that managing money ranks as one of the least favorite tasks of Attitude's readers, possibly up there with making dinner every night. From budgeting to paying bills on time to investing to taxes, money is just a challenge for anyone whose hyper-focus just kicks in when a topic is really interesting. We are so pleased today to have Dr. Stephanie Sarkis join us. Dr. Sarkis will be addressing smart money strategies for ADHDers. So let me turn it over to Stephanie Sarkis, and again, with our gratitude for your time today.
Thanks so much, Susan. So today I'm going to just quickly go over a little bit about what happens when you have ADHD. So as a lot of you already know, you have issues with chronic disorganization, issues with trying to pay bills on time, trying to budget your money, issues with maybe not going over with your spouse or partner some big ticket items before you buy them. It's hard for you to wait 24 hours. So first we're going to talk a little bit about why you have issues with money when you have ADHD. And then we're going to be talking about solutions. And as Susan said, then we'll be taking questions from the audience as well. So chronic disorganization is a main feature of ADHD. So in our diagnostic manual, chronic disorganization is a symptom of ADHD. It can start impacting us from childhood all the way up to the present. And what that looks like is that we have a hard time getting things in order, not just stuff, but also ideas too. And money management is all about organization and paying attention to detail, and paying attention to detail is also a symptom of ADHD in our diagnostic manual. So we kind of get a double whammy of issues with ADHD and money. And not only that, but 50% of people with ADHD also have learning disabilities, and that includes having a math learning disability. So it may be that when we even try to add numbers in our head, we can't do it correctly, or just adding up numbers, on paper doesn't work. So a lot of issues with money and impulsivity, they create a perfect storm. So what happens with ADHD is that you have things called executive functions in your brain. And these are tasks similar to what an executive does at a company. They process information, they give out information, they manage information, and again, the executive functions are dysfunctional ADHD. So the executive functions include organization, planning, forethought or thinking ahead, inhibition of behaviors. So that's that stop sign that pops up before you do something that says, well, maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should think about that first. That stop sign does not pop up in the ADHD brain. So it's really difficult to plan and organize money tasks because of these issues with your frontal lobes of your brain, your executive functions. And executive functions aren't just part of ADHD. They can be part of other disorders too. But when you combine executive dysfunction with the other symptoms of ADHD, they can create, again, a perfect storm for money management. So, again, paying attention to detail, having a math learning disability, disorganization, really does make money management more of a challenge. And the thing is with ADHD, it's not that we don't want to organize our money or that we don't want to budget. It's just we're not really sure how. Or we try a new way of doing things, and it lasts for maybe a day, and then the next day you're right back to where you started. So it can be incredibly frustrating for people with ADHD. So one of the key things, I was talking to Susan about this a little bit earlier, is that it's great that we live in an age now where we have technology so that we can do a lot of things online and get rid of paperwork. One of the things you want to aim for is to have a least amount of paper as possible. So, for instance, when I have receipts for my business, I take a picture of them with my phone, and then I shred the receipt. The IRS does count scanned receipts as being valid. So you want to get rid of the paper as much as possible because paper becomes a monster that starts multiplying and taking over our space. And when you have ADHD, the more visual clutter you have, the less motivation you can have to get things done. Your brain just gets really tired. And so you want to make sure that you scan or receipts or take photos of them to make sure you have a record. Shred the original, especially if it's got your contact information on it. Make sure you use a cross-cut shredder. That's really important so that the paper gets thoroughly shredded, because we really want to make sure that you avoid any kind of identity theft issues. And also back up your laptop or phone on a regular basis. And you can schedule your laptop and phone to back up on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis. And the way you figure out how to do this is you can either ask your teenager or other kid, they know how to do this stuff, or you can take your laptop to the Apple Store or Sony, wherever your laptop or other technology item is from, and they can help you do that. Also, really important, use money management software and apps. So again, we live in an age of technology that we can manage our money without even having to lift a finger. So there's a program and an app called Mint, M-I-N-T, and that's for free. And they will manage all of your accounts. They'll let you know if you've spent more than usual in a category. You can, again, translate that into an online program. You can also pay your bills through there. There's Quicken, which is Quicken, and that's also a money management program that keeps track of your accounts, your investments, and again, you can also pay your bills from there. So also for Apple, there's iBank, that's I-B-A-N-K, and again, it syncs with your banks, and so you don't even have to update it yourself. You don't even have to balance your checkbook because it does it all for you. So really nice way and low-cost way to get money management down. And again, it automatically updates. You can just schedule it. You can say, every day, computer, I want you to go online and update my account information. It does it for you. And you can also set up warnings so it emails you when your account is low. So really nice way to keep track of that money. And again, you can ask a teenager in your household, or also there are classes available, community classes and online classes as to how to use Mint, Quicken, iBank. So a lot of easy, fun ways to learn how to use the program. And yeah, I do say fun because some of the online trainings use a lot of graphics. It's very user-friendly. So it's a really nice way to learn how to use these different software apps. So also, you want to use direct deposit and automatic withdrawal. You want to get rid of using paper bills, meaning that you want to sign up as much as possible that when you have a bill due, the money automatically comes out of your account. And when you get a check, that money automatically goes into your account. Almost every payor that you write checks to has an online way of doing it. And a lot of companies actually give you incentives for paying online. They'll give you a certain percentage off your bill or other incentives to have you sign up online, because it's a win-win situation. You're getting your bills online, you're getting them paid without having to think about them, and they're also saving money by not having to mail you a bill. So, and also with direct deposit, there's no chance of you losing a check either. So you really want to sign up for that. I know sometimes people are concerned that they're not going to have enough money in the account when you have automatic withdrawal. And we'll talk a little bit about that too, and that that's where we need to figure out how we can kind of cut back a little bit in an area. Also, you want to wait 24 hours before buying a big ticket item. For some people, a big ticket item is anything over $100. Some people it's over $500, $1,000, whatever dollar amount you feel is something that you should really wait on. And my feeling is if you don't buy an item right away and you wait, and the next day it's not there, then maybe you just weren't meant to have that item. And several stores, if you find out like there's a sale, and if you don't buy the thing right now, you're not going to get the sale percentage, a lot of stores will let you come back tomorrow and still get the sales price. So just because something says that the sale's ending today, feel free to walk up to them and say, hey, here's the deal. I can't buy this right now, but I'm thinking about coming back tomorrow. And, 9 times out of 10, they may give you the sales price. All you got to do is ask. And it may seem kind of scary the first time you ask, but as soon as you do it the first time, usually okay, and you have no problem doing it from then on. So, and also everything's negotiable too, even things that you don't think are negotiable. So if you have an item that you see in a store and let's say it's got some scratches on it, but other than that it's working fine, you can ask the manager of the store if you can get a percentage off the item, and a lot of times they just go ahead and do that. So a lot of ways that we can just ask for what we need. So also, if you have a spouse or partner and you're getting into arguments about money, which are more common in couples with ADHD, you might want to consider keeping separate savings and checking accounts. And each of you pays different household bills. Like one person pays the mortgage or rent, another person pays the utility bill. And usually I recommend that people do that based on their percentage of income. So if your spouse or partner makes like triple the amount of money, they obviously would pay more of the household expenses. So it's fair. So, and I've noticed that people that do this tend to fight about money less because they aren't having issues like not knowing when somebody wrote a check or things like that. So, but I would always kind of recommend talking to a financial professional before doing something like that. Also, credit cards. So the old rule used to be you got rid of your credit cards, you only use them for emergencies. However, when you are online and buying things online, you have to use a credit card because if you use a debit card and somebody hacks into your account, they can wipe your account out. With credit cards, you at least have some time that you can file an appeal with your credit card company and not have that charge on your bill. So what I recommend is having a low-limit credit card that's not connected to your bank accounts. Because when you have a credit card that's linked to your bank accounts, hackers can get in and mess with your bank account too. So again, have a separate credit card. American Express and some other companies have credit cards where you can just add cash on. That's a nice alternative for a lot of people with ADHD because again, it is cash and you're not impacting your credit. And also it really keeps a cap on how much money you're spending. So also it's really important as ADHDers that we realize that it's perfectly okay and needed that you seek help from someone. You know, nobody goes through this on their own, ADHD or not. So it's really important that we talk to financial professionals. We look online for some information about how to manage our money. And financial professionals can include having a bookkeeper, somebody that you pay per hour to make sure that your financial statements are up to date, that your online accounts are up to date. It can mean talking to an accountant to make sure they do your taxes. I've worked with quite a few people with ADHD that have a lot of difficulties paying their taxes on time because it's detail-oriented work and organization issues. So when you talk to an accountant, and I was just telling Susan that accountants and other financial professionals now are, in some cases, getting specifically trained on chronic disorganization. Really important that you meet with an accountant so you can get your taxes done and sent off on time. Also, a financial planner can help you figure out how to save up money for the future because that's really important too. An area that people with ADHD have an issue with is making sure they have enough money saved up for when they retire. So, and also a main point I wanted to say is that there is hope, and no matter where you've come from financially, there is a way that you can get better at it and that you may actually start enjoying managing your money. I know that's kind of an outrageous statement to make, but once you get control over your money, you can find that you're making some change in your life, and it can be pretty exciting. So now I'm going to answer some of your questions about how to have good money management and how to work with paying your bills on time and how to kind of talk with spouse and partner about money management issues. So fire away.
Okay, thank you so much, Stephanie. First, let's do a poll. Let's find out from the people listening what their key financial management issues are. Which of these give you the most challenges? Organization of paper, saving up for the future, impulsive spending, arguments with spouse, partner, paying bills on time. I'm going to bet on paying bills on time, but I could be wrong. So, what do you think, Stephanie?
I would think, I was going to say I was going to estimate, but I don't know if that's going to throw off the results. But I would say paying bills on time and probably also impulsive spending, maybe.
And saving for the future. I guess they're all related. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, here we go.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow, it's everything.
Because you could check more than one. That's right. So
right. Okay, well, that's so ADD. We all have problems with everything on the screen. Absolutely. All right.
Yay.
Yay, that's great. So let's just start with organization of financial papers. Stephanie, you gave the very welcome suggestion not to keep it, but I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that that's just easier said than done. I find, at least for me, I'm afraid to tick off, yes, don't send me the paper, just send it to me online because I'm afraid I'll never find it again or see it again.
Well, one thing to keep in mind is you can't find it anyway, even if you do have a paper version.
It's really true.
So that's one thing to think about is like, really, how often do you know where you put the paper version?
Right.
Now,
Right.
In cases where you're required to have the paper version for, let's say, the business you work for, then that's something else. But again, many companies are working towards using no paper whatsoever. And again, the IRS accepts scanned receipts just as if they were real receipts. So there also are scanners that will actually organize and read the receipt for you. So they'll tell you who the payor was, how you paid, whether it was cash or debit, and they'll organize it into different kind of columns for you, so you can just print that out and take it to your accountant or use it to do your taxes.
Okay, so just get rid of the paper, no piles.
Right, and one of the rules I kind of have for people is to get rid of 10 things a day, even if it's just 10 receipts. And if you do 10 things a day, it's amazing how quickly you'll realize how much less clutter you have in your house. And again, just 10 things. That's it, and you can just check them off as you go. And a little bit at a time is better than you spending an entire day, being exhausted, never wanting to organize again.
That's
so again, just 10
really good
receipts a day.
suggestion. Yeah, Gail posted, I have 4 bags of paperwork. It's overwhelming. So your point is just 10 minutes a day. Don't try to tackle the whole
just
4
10
bags.
things, not even 10 minutes, just 10 things. Just take out 10 pieces of paper and scan them, take a picture of them, get rid of them, and that's it. And you're done for the day. It's really important that we limit ourselves, too, because if we do too much, then we get burned out.
Right. Elizabeth has posted, I just started using the Doxy wireless scanner and then shredding the paper, and what a relief. So I think you've got a supporter there. So the Doxy wireless scanner, that's interesting. Do you scan then, Stephanie, or do you use your phone?
Yeah, I can take photos of my iPad. There's a scanner in there. I also take photos of my phone and have an album called Receipts. And also I have a program that will take photos of the receipts and then again categorize them. So there are different ways you can do this. And the important thing is just get rid of the paper, but keep a record of it. And like the attendee just said, it's such a relief to start seeing the paper reduce, and you get your living space back. And we get rid of all that clutter, we open up our lives to so much more good stuff. So.
There's a suggestion here from Jeremy, which sounds great. It's a smartphone app called Expensify, EXPENSIFY, that tracks your receipts. And so you don't have to, quote, as he says, keep them, i.e. lose them.
Right.
Yeah, he said you take a photo and it files it for you. That sounds great.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing to keep in mind, too, is thermal receipts, which are printed on that kind of slick paper. Those will kind of disappear or fade after a while, so it's really important you scan those. So it's actually in your best interest to scan and get rid of them because when you get around to tax season, your thermal receipts may just look blank.
Okay. Here's a question that I think many people I've heard before. I need help with doing a budget. Do you have any suggestions for a good budget and how to stick with it? Sure.
And the ADD in your money book that I wrote, I put an ADHD-friendly budget in there because a lot of financial books I think are aimed towards non-ADHD people, and they get all this detail work, and I'm like, I want a budget that I can follow. So I create a budget that just gets into 2 categories, expenses and income. And you just kind of ballpark figures, so just estimate how much you're spending in each area, and it breaks it down by category. And the nice thing about and almost all of the apps is that they have budgets built in. And I think the important thing is to realize that there are fixed expenses, which are things we can't change, which is our rent or mortgage. Also, flexible things are entertainment expenses, groceries. And so we need to look at what's a fixed expense and what's a flexible expense. And we need to take a look at the fact that the flexible expenses are the ones that we can kind of save here and there. So, for instance, like entertainment expenses, maybe you don't need to go to the movies every weekend. Maybe you could watch a movie at home. Little things like that will add up over time. And also even on the fixed items, let's say your rent is coming up soon. Maybe you could find maybe a little further from work, but maybe a nicer place for less rent. So it's really important to keep an idea of what you're putting money towards, and you can do that by simply looking on your online programs or also looking through your checkbook and seeing what you're writing checks for, and just put a general figure of how much, like round it up to the nearest zero. So, for example, if you spend $48 a month, just turn that into $50 on a list. Or if you spend $32, just turn it to 30, because you just want to get a general idea of how much you're spending. And so budgets don't have to be really detailed things. They're just look at them as like a guideline to let you know where you can save. And some people have found with doing the budget that they were paying 2 internet fees. Like they were paying for internet twice in their house. They only needed 1 internet company. So it's a real quick way to figure out ways to cut money.
How do you track against the budget? What's your advice on that? I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. I mean, you can write out a list, but then at the end of the month, I mean, do you track every week, or do you?
What you do is you get the money management software, plug your numbers in there, and it'll do a pie chart. And people with ADHD, we tend to like visual representations of stuff, like graphs, charts, and it'll show you how much money you're spending in each area, and then you can kind of compare it to the budget you've written down. And from then on, you just go with the computer budget. And the money management app will show you, here's last month what you spent money on, and here's this month. Or here's last year what you spent money on, here's this year. And you can tell it exactly what you want it to show you. And so when you get that visual representation of how much money you're spending, it's a lot easier than using numbers on a page. So writing down your costs is just a good kind of diving board into the pool of budgeting. So, and I don't even like the word budget. It sounds like a yucky word for people with ADHD. I kind of like, spending guideline, I think is a better way to look at it.
Okay, so I take it you're using mint.com from what you're saying.
I actually use iBank because I have Mac and Apple, so it just depends on the person's preference. Mint is available for Mac. Quicken for Mac, the version for Mac is not as detailed as it is for PCs. So, but Mint, I'm pretty sure that works well with Mac.
Okay. Yes, a couple of people have written that budget sounds like diet, so they prefer spending plan to the word budget. Yeah.
Right. I like spending plan. That works.
Yeah. or not spending plan, as the case may be.
Right, and we want to make sure we look at it as managing money instead of cutting back on stuff too. I know I said cut back like 5 times, but we really want to get away from the diet view, which is you have to deprive yourself of stuff. This is more, again, figuring out maybe you're paying something twice, or maybe there's a way if you pay your student loans online, you can get some percentages taken off. So this is just a way to kind of peer over that cliff. I think sometimes when we peer over the cliff, it's not as scary as when we are thinking about money management. If we just kind of take a leap and look at what we're spending, I think it makes it a lot easier for everybody. It's less nerve-wracking.
Right. Have you heard or used e-money? That's a question that was just posed.
I've heard of e-money. There's several different apps and software, and what I would do is look at the reviews. There's a website called CNET, C-N-E-T, that reviews software and apps, and you can look on there, and they'll give you their opinion of how user-friendly the app is. It depends on what your level of skill is with online programs. If this is new to you, you may want to find an app that people have commented this is really user-friendly. If you're a tech person, you may be able to use a program that is a little less user-friendly. Really depends on your comfort level, and you may need to try out a couple to see which one works best for you, and that's totally okay. A lot of the programs have a trial period where they're free for a certain number of days, and Mint, like I said, is free. I think if you add on different features, it costs you a little more, but overall, very inexpensive. And if you think about the fact that you really can't afford to not manage your money because you're getting late fees on bills, and you are spending more money than maybe what you're taking in, so this is something that you really can't afford not to do.
Can we just dial all the way back? There are a number of people online who are saying that they just find bill paying excruciating to the point where they just don't do it or procrastinate or just really. So it's way beyond budgeting. It's really just even addressing the piles of bills and getting them paid on time.
Right. So let's get rid of the piles. So go to all paperless billing and set it up to pay through your account, really, because when we see that stack of papers, we're like, where are we even going to start? And it's hard for us to find time because of time management issues. It's hard for us to realize how much time it's actually going to take to pay those bills. So again, going on to online and paying your credit card through electronic means or paying your utility bill online really cuts back on the stress, because here you are paying bills without even having to do it. You're just sitting back doing your work and your bills are getting paid without you even having to lift a finger. And that's really what we want to work towards. Now, if there's an issue again with finances and the reason why you're not paying your bills is you're not sure if you have enough money, then that's something where I'd recommend you go to a financial planner so you can figure out maybe what areas are there some changes that need to be made.
Okay. How about impulsive spending? That seems to be a significant issue for a number of people.
Yeah, and I think we need to look at chemically what happens when you impulse spend. When you impulse spend, you're increasing dopamine in your brain, and dopamine is a chemical that's low in ADHD. So what impulsive spending does is it gives you kind of a high or soothing feeling to your brain in the immediate future, but long term, it hits you how much money you spend, then you feel bad. It's kind of like an addiction and withdrawal. So I think it's really important, first, you have ADHD that's being treated effectively. Medications have been found to actually decrease your impulsive spending, because when you get enough dopamine in your brain, you're not looking for ways to self-medicate or raise your dopamine level. So people that are on stimulant medication will usually wait longer for more money than spend impulsively. And let me back that up. So there's a study that found that they gave people two options. You could either get a shorter amount of money now, or if you waited a day, you could get double the amount of money. People without medication were more likely to take the smaller amount of money right now, and the people who are on medication are more likely to wait till the next day and get double their money. So even something simple like that, you're more likely to get more benefits from money if you do have your ADHD treated effectively. Again, if you do not get enough brain chemicals in your system, you're going to find a way to medicate, and that could be impulsive spending. It also leads to disorganization. So again, that's the key feature, is getting your ADHD under good treatment.
Okay. Other than treatment, here's a person who says, I can't seem to wait 24 hours. I become hyper-focused on something I want, and it's really difficult to wait.
Well, one of the things to keep in mind if you are waiting is to look into practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness has been showing a lot of effectiveness for treating ADHD in research, and that's a form of meditation where you stay in the here and now. And one of the books on that that's really good is by Lydia Zylowska, Zylowska, and she's written a book called The Mindfulness Prescription for Adult ADHD. And she has an acronym called STOP, which is S, stop what you're doing. T, take a deep breath. O, observe what you're doing, check in with yourself. And then P, plan accordingly. Meaning that when you're hyper-focusing on something, stop, take a deep breath, tell yourself, is this something I should be doing? Is this in my best interest? Is this getting me anywhere? And then after that, you do the P part, which is planning. And you say, well, maybe I could distract myself by working on something else. Or if this item's not there tomorrow, then that everything's still going to be okay. So again, that's the acronym STOP. Stop what you're doing, take a deep breath, observe what you're doing, and plan accordingly. And if you check in with yourself during the day, when you're having that feeling of maybe obsessing about something, it really gets you focused back on track. And studies have found that the more people with ADHD practice mindfulness, the more it automatically happens to them. They're able to focus without having to work at it as much.
Lydia, let me point out that Lydia Zalowska did a webinar, and the audio is on Attitude's website, attitudemag.com/webinars. It was incredibly powerful, and I think people really appreciated her point of view.
Yeah, I highly recommend that.
Yeah, just to support what Stephanie said, professional after professional has advocated mindfulness I guess mindfulness in a sense just means stopping and sort of dealing with the impulsivity that we're living with, but it makes
Staying here
sense.
now.
Right.
Well, the nice thing too is it doesn't cost you any money. All you need is your brain. You're with your brain all day, and you don't need any equipment, right? So it's a perfect thing, and it's again falls in your naughty word budget, falls in your spending plan.
Right.
I mean, again,
spending plan.
right. So again, why not do it? Why not just try it and see what happens?
How about the issue of how to make financial management a priority in a crazy world? So here's a person who says, I have no emotional challenges around money. I just don't seem to get the keeping track done with all the other things I have to do. There are just too many issues. There are too many things that have to get done.
Well, I think one of the things we need to realize is when we need to delegate things to people. And people with ADHD kind of weren't made to do detail-oriented work. We weren't made to unload and load the dishwasher. We weren't made to, mop up our house. That's the detail work that we really have a hard time with. And keeping track of money management is one of those things. So I really recommend that someone gets a bookkeeper or other kind of a personal assistant to help you. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, how am I supposed to afford that when I'm having money issues? But a personal assistant can just be a college student that you pay, $8 to $10 an hour for maybe 4 hours a week. And they help you get organized. They help you set up your money management software. They help you keep track of your papers. They help you scan things. And when you get more of a hold on stuff, it makes life much easier. And again, keeping track of money is not one of our fortes. So why not kind of have somebody else help us with that? And then we have more time to do the things we're good at.
I will volunteer that I have a terrible time delegating, and I once had a huge pile of bills related to something that just dragged on forever. I just threw them in a pile on the floor as they came in. Mm-hmm. And finally, I hired a TaskRabbit. I don't know if the people listening have the TaskRabbit in your city, but I hired a TaskRabbit, and she was amazing. She came in, got it all in order, and it just changed my life. So to support your point about getting help when you just are not getting to something.
Right, sense. And there's TaskRabbit. I think that's available in I think in now major cities, and also that's TaskRabbit.com. And also you can get just a trusted friend or family member. Again, this is someone that may know your financial stuff, so you want to make sure you have a really solid relationship with them. Right. But just having them help you file paperwork can be really helpful. And making sure that you only do it for 30 minutes at a time, and then you take a 15-minute break. And you don't do it more than a couple hours at a time, because we really need to take a break. Going outside really resets the ADHD brain, and we really don't want to do an organization task or any other kind of detail work for more than that period of time, because we can get really burned out and not want to do it again. And again, having somebody with you, even somebody just in the room with you, can make a huge difference as to how much you're getting done.
Elizabeth has just posted several links on mindfulness, which I just instant message to the group, and she says that she started mindfulness practice about 8 months ago, and it's helped her on an enormous number of levels. And we have a person on the webinar who is a TaskRabbit, so that's very cool.
Yay!
TaskRabbits are awesome. Can we talk about the relationship issues around money?
Sure.
I think probably the most common post I'm seeing here is tension between spouses. Several people who post that they can't manage money and their spouse can't understand what's wrong. Others posting that their spouse has ADHD and doesn't seem to be able to manage money or set priorities. What's your advice on dealing with two different partners that are spouses in which they're very different attitudes toward money?
Well, I think first it's important to look at what your childhood relationship was like with money, because that gives you an idea as to where your spouse is coming from. Now, if you're ADHD, it's sometimes very possible that your parents didn't manage money well, so you didn't really learn how to do it. Now, if you're really fortunate to have a parent that managed money well, then you pick up on those skills. So when you have someone that had money mismanagement parents and somebody that had money management parents, it can create a lot of conflicts, because one person says to the other, how could you possibly know how to do this, or how come you don't know how to do this? So that's really important to have that talk. And in my book, I talk about how discuss that with your spouse. Again, it's really important to know where each of you are coming from. Sometimes people that have impulsive spending, a lot of it can be traced to the fact that when they were kids, they weren't really aware of how money worked. And nobody really taught them. So I think that's an important thing to keep track of, is it's not a personal thing. It's just sometimes, we just work with what we knew. And also, one of the things to keep in mind is that all couples fight about money. It's just that people with ADHD, it happens more often. So it's not so much the fighting about money, it's how often you're fighting. And in the book also I talk about a way that you can argue without fighting, which is how to present your case. You talk for 10 minutes, the other person doesn't say a word, they respond with open-ended questions like, tell me more about that, or when you say this, do you mean this? And you do that for about 5 minutes, then the other person talks for 10 minutes, and then you follow up with the other person asking questions. So, and then setting a limit to how long you're going to talk about it and only sticking to one topic at a time. And that sounds confusing, but it's really important that you argue instead of fight, and arguing's okay. I'm more concerned with couples that don't argue because that tends to show that they're not communicating well. And I also recommend couples therapy too. There are therapists that specialize in working with couples with ADHD. And I think it's important that you find a therapist that does specialize in ADHD, because there are issues like impulsive spending, money management, that don't occur at the same frequency they do in other couples. And ADA's, an Attitude is a great place to find that list of people that you can go to for ADHD-related couples counseling. Again, I think that's really important, that you both see kind of where each other's coming from. And if you don't have ADHD, I think it's also important to acknowledge, again, this isn't personal. The person with ADHD, their brain just can't process the idea of money and can't, or doesn't have that stop sign to have them wait before they make a decision. So, and I would talk to your spouse maybe too about looking into that cash paid credit card or lowering the cash limit, and that you do it too. I think it's important that both people do the same money management practices and not just the person with ADHD, because what you don't want to have happen is that you're telling the ADHD person how to do all this stuff and you're not doing any of it. I think it's really important that things are equal. And for people with ADHD, if the non-ADHD spouse is managing the money at home, that means you also still get equal access to it. And you have just as much right to look at the money management program software as a person without ADHD. I think that's something to keep in mind too.
One of the people who's on the webinar who has terrible problems, both with her own money management and with her spouse not understanding, says she hides any and all bills and purchases from her husband. What's your thought on that?
I call that financial infidelity, because unless you're buying a gift to your spouse, you don't want them to know what it is. It's actually, it can be pretty damaging, because those purchases do get found out. Now, one way to kind of deal with that is if you kind of work out with your spouse, hey, I'm going to have this separate account, and then maybe I can buy some stuff for myself, and then we can just buy our own things, and I have to talk about it. Some couples have agreed to do that. They'll have one account where they pay the household things, and each of them will have an account where they spend a certain amount of money per month. Because what you don't want to do is totally deprive yourself of buying fun stuff, because then you'll kind of go nuts, and then you'll kind of binge on buying. So I think it's important to at least let yourself buy one kind of fun thing once in a while. And again, having a separate account where you and your spouse both agree that that's your account and you can buy what you want out of it within reason, I think that can probably be a better alternative.
Okay. Yeah, I think that people don't like to nag. So here's my ADHD spouse tends to impulse buy, and how do I stop him without nagging? So, yeah.
I think going to a financial professional can help. Again, I think couples counseling can help, so everybody's heard and everybody gets their side of the story in. And so the financial professional and counselor together really can create a kind of comfortable, open space to talk about those issues, when otherwise, when you've talked about them at home, it may turn into an argument, a fight. You may not have your opinion heard, or you don't feel listened to. So again, I think having someone kind of help you out with that can make a huge difference. And also getting effective treatment for ADHD, again, can make a big difference in the impulsive spending.
Have you seen any resources, Stephanie, that where people can There are parents who want to know how to help their children learn money management. Couples who say, before maybe premaritally, should they get are there resources where engaged couples can go and get counseling?
Sure. I address actually both those issues, kids and money, and also getting engaged and getting married and money in my book, ADD and Your Money. Also, there's a neat book that you can get called the Marital Compatibility Test, and that gives you a bunch of questions to ask your spouse or your future spouse before you get married. And it talks about everything from money issues to sex, to the temperature of the house during the day. I mean, all sorts of stuff that you don't think about until after you're married. So that's called the Marital Compatibility Test. And that's kind of a fun quiz that you can talk to each other about that talks about your spending style and whether you consider, a certain purchase to be essential or not. Really important to know that stuff. And again, my book has one chapter on talking to kids, another chapter on talking to the spouse. Not only that, but also planning a reasonably priced wedding too, which is a lot easier than people think.
Wow. How about saving for retirement? There are a number of people who say that's a big challenge, even if they manage the month well and get through it, that they're not able to put away a certain amount for the long term.
Right. Well, I think we should keep in mind the bottom line is you want to take in more than you spend. And we want to keep that in mind, is that you want to have a plus at the end of the month instead of a minus on your account. So one of the things that I would recommend is even if you put away $5, $10, $15 into your savings every month, that starts adding up. And I think also it's important to look at what are you spending money on and what are some things that you could change. And because planning is one of the executive functions that's impaired in ADHD, a lot of people with ADHD don't take advantage of their employer's retirement plans, don't save up for the future, because it's difficult for a lot of us to look that far into the future. We're going to live off our savings. But again, I think talking to a financial professional can help. Again, even putting in a little bit of money at a time. You can even have it set up at your bank where a certain percentage of your paycheck every month goes into savings instead of checking. And that's a great way to get that money put in there without you even having to lift a finger to do it.
So pay yourself first.
Yes, pay yourself first. And the ideal is to have a year of living expenses saved up, but I would just aim the beginning for about 3 months worth of living expenses. So if you lost your job tomorrow, this fund could take care of 3 months of your bills. That's what you really want to aim for.
Okay. Here's a person that's really interesting. She says, that I find this fascinating. She's a business manager, and at work, she balances the budget absolutely spectacularly, but at home, it's completely the opposite. She has, this last year was her highest grossing earning year, and she has no savings, and she has really a hard time just paying the bills on time.
That's actually quite common. I've worked with several people who really have their management financial stuff down at work, and then at home things kind of fall apart. I mean, there's this saying that the cobbler's kid wears no shoes, and that means that you could be really good at something professionally, but that doesn't mean that you do the same thing at home. So I think first we need to kind of cut ourselves some slack, that just because you do something well at work doesn't always translate into personal life. And it's really good that she acknowledges that. I think that's 50% of it, is to realize that you're doing things differently at home than at work. Now, you have to think about it as in you get paid at work. You get a payment based on how you do at your job. So it's a little bit different than at home. Nobody's paying you at home for doing your budget. Now, if you set up a reward system for yourself, that can be really helpful. And people with ADHD respond really well to rewards. At work, your reward's your paycheck. At home, it could be, if I kind of set up the money management software this week, let's go out to dinner one night. Have some kind of incentive set up that you're paying yourself. And you need to give yourself that incentive right away. You need to give your reward immediately after whatever you've accomplished, or else people with ADHD don't connect the reward to their behavior. But again, positive reinforcement works really well for people with ADHD. And that's something to keep in mind for spouses, non-ADHD spouses too, that if your spouse is spending money wisely one day and mentioning it and saying, hey, I really appreciate the fact that you're able to wait before buying that, that can make a huge difference in whether someone does it again. What you focus on grows.
Interesting. Okay. Here's a person who says, she says she thinks to herself, oh, this is only $1. This is only $2, so it doesn't matter. And she feels like she's sort of, the 1,000 cuts, or she's using all her money on these tiny, inconsequential purchases. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on how to address that?
I think one of the main things to look at is whether you buy Starbucks or other expensive coffee in the morning.
Oh, wow.
That's $4 every day. And if you look at that, 4 times 7 does $28 a month. And, I have an LD, so whatever 28 times 12 is, it's a lot of money. So instead, take that $4 and put it in that jar.
$28 a week, Stephanie. 28 times 52. It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And so instead of spending $4 every morning at Starbucks, make your own coffee. They have coffee makers that, the one-a-day cup things that have really fancy coffee in them. And so it tastes just the same. And put that $4 in a jar instead. And then at the end of the month, add up how much money you have. I mean, it's pretty shocking how much that is. Or just keep a tally. Write down in your phone in the notepad what you're spending money on. And then add it up, because part of it is accountability. If you start adding up, $1 here, $1 there, then you finally realize at the end of the month how much money you spend. Another alternative to that is giving yourself $100 cash every week or month, whatever your budget allows. I said that dirty word, budget again. Whatever your spending plan allows. And when you're done with that cash, you're done. Yeah, that's a great way to look at stuff. Is that a lot of us don't use cash. We use debit cards and credit cards. And for ADHD, it's really important that we pay attention to the fact that we're spending real money, whether we're paying it now or later with a credit card. So when you give yourself cash and tell yourself, at the end of the week, this cash is gone and I'm done, that really is a wake-up call as to how much you're spending.
So that is that the envelope idea? There's someone here who posted, what about having envelopes for different amounts of money?
Yeah. You do the same amount of money every week. It doesn't have to be complicated. You just say, okay, I'm going to do $50 this week. Again, usually it's maybe about 10% or less of how much money you take home every month. And you divide that by week, and you say to yourself, here's what I have, and when I spend this, I'm done. You don't use your debit card. You don't use your credit card. That's all you're using. So I think doing that makes things much more real, and it makes people with ADHD much more accountable.
That makes absolute sense. Given that we're so visual, I think that credit cards are just sort of deadly.
Yeah, when you see the cash actually leaving your hands, it makes it's much more powerful than when you're just handing over a plastic card to somebody.
Steve says, I find it helpful to think of the consequences of my impulsive actions and then think through how I'll feel afterwards. So that's really mindfulness, isn't it? I mean, what he's saying. I mean, that's
the consequences. Sometimes that's easier for some ADHD people than others, and that's great if they're able to do that. And think about, this may give me a rush right now that I'm buying this, but what's it going to be like when my spouse or partner finds this on the credit card bill? So, but I think that's one of the major issues with ADHD is that learning from consequences can be one of those things that's impaired, one of those executive functions that doesn't work well. Okay. So I think that it's important, again, to look at the brain chemical stuff, which is, this soothes your brain right away, but it's not going to kind of fix the problem.
Right. Here's a great question. Is there some quality that people with ADHD have that is good as relates to money?
Sure. I think that people with ADHD can be really creative and use visual skills. I think that the people I've worked with that are in money management fields tend to be really helpful for people that do have money management issues. I think that, overall, people with ADHD, we really relate to people that may be struggling or have ADHD themselves. So I think that money managers I've talked to with ADHD do really well with clients that have chronic disorganization or ADHD. Overall, I think they tend to be more creative. What I've found, people with ADHD is, and we are looking at a financial spending plan, they find really creative ways to save money in some areas and maybe switch cell phone providers to save money. And they tend to have, opposed to people without ADHD, people with ADHD tend to have a lot more ideas about what to do instead of what they're doing now, which I think is really neat. They think outside the box, which is really
right. Yeah, that makes sense. Danella has made a great suggestion. She says that she was diagnosed with adult ADHD at age 48. And when she began dealing with paper organization, her therapist suggested a simple habit of first things first, which is incoming mail. She has 2 small baskets. One is scan to shred, and the other is recycle. So right from incoming mail, she goes to what's going to get burned to scan to disk, or what's going to be recycled.
Even
so that
better,
seems like a great tip.
Even better, get rid of all the paper. if you go to my Facebook page, my business page, Stephanie Sarkis, Ph.D., I have a link there where I list the website that you can go to so you can stop getting junk mail. And you can also stop getting direct marketing mail from other companies too. Because when you get all that mail and their bills are in there along with all these ads, it's really difficult for people with ADHD to sift through all that stuff. So you want to decrease the amount of paperwork coming to your house as much as possible. That includes bills and, again, also getting stuff mailed to you for marketing purposes. So, again, that's that. If you go online, I think it's DMA Marketing, but I'm not totally sure on that. But online and also on Twitter, I think I posted the link too. Okay. Really, really good to make sure that we really cut down the amount of paperwork. The ideal is to have an empty mailbox every day.
Back to the envelopes. Nancy says she uses envelopes when she goes on vacation. So she has one for each day with a set amount according to whatever the plan is. And sometimes she goes home with money left over. So there's another confirmation of the envelope cash system of money management. And another suggestion from Judith, a great book. I think I've read this book, Your Money or Your Life, which talks about watching where your money goes every day and has a very simple form. She said that's helped her enormously. That's a pretty well-known book, isn't it, Stephanie? Your Money or Your Life?
I've heard of that one, yeah. I've also heard of there's one by Wall Street Journal, actually, I recommend, that uses a lot of pictures, a lot of short paragraphs to read, and it's called Guide to Understanding Personal Finance. And I really like it because it's all color-coded as to what area that they're talking about, whether it's paying a mortgage, or banking, or savings, credit. So that's a really nice one too. That's Wall Street Journal Guide to Understanding Personal Finance. And I think also just, when you're just have like 5 or 10 minutes, just look online, read an article about personal finance. And the more you know about it, the less scary it seems.
Right. Okay. I think we're coming to a close. Oh, here's another reference for Andrew Mellon's book, Unstuff Your Life. Wow, great title. Helpful for organizing paper mail, filing, home office. And then several recommendations for LearnVest.com. Free webinars, newsletters on money management. So, yeah, there you have it. And
there's also a really nice app called Unfilth Your Life. And the F word is, unfilth, F-I-L-T-H, your life. And I'll just warn everybody, the F actually stands for another word, but they wouldn't put it on the app store unless they change the word. So when you get the app, it's going to say a naughty word, but that's okay. But it's Unfilth Your Life, and it's neat because you'll have a tab that says 5, 10, 15 minutes. And so you click on that, and it tells you one thing to clean or one thing to organize at a time. So you say, I have 5 minutes before I go to work, and it'll say, okay, well, wipe down the walls of your bathroom, or, throw out, 3 receipts. And it's really nice. It's very ADHD geared because it operates in short increments of time. It even gives you a timer of 20 minutes with 10-minute breaks already set up, so you don't overwork yourself. So that's Unfilth Your Life. Or Unfilth Your, it's Unfilth Your Habitat.
Unfilth Your Habitat. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We have very few minutes left. Do you have any final comments?
Yeah, I think it's important to know that asking for help is a strength, not a weakness, and also that, nobody gets through this alone. Think about a CEO at a company. They have a lot of people helping them, and we need that too. And if you've been told you should be able to do this on your own, again, nobody does anything on their own. And there is hope, regardless of where you're at in your financial picture, that things can get better.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for your time today, and everyone for listening in. Thanks, everyone.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
For more Attitude Podcast and information on living well with attention deficit, visit AttitudeMag.com. That's AdditudeMag.com.